The tide that changed everything. The digital clock on the library wall read 8:47 a.m. when Leo Martinez stuffed his worn notebook into his backpack with shaking hands. 45 minutes. He had exactly 45 minutes to reach the Ocean Shore Marine Research Center for the interview that would determine whether he'd spend another winter sleeping in doorways or finally have a chance at the guardianship program that could change his life. The morning fog clung to Port Crest's waterfront like a gray shroud as Leo jogged past the familiar docks where he'd spent countless nights studying tide pools by flashlight, memorizing the Latin names of species most people never noticed. His sneakers, held together with duct tape and hope, slapped against the wet concrete, each step a prayer that he'd make it on time. Then he heard it. The alarm. Not the gentle warning bell that signaled high tide, but the urgent, mechanical shriek that meant catastrophe. Leo's heart lurched as he pivoted toward the sound, his instincts overriding everything his rational mind screamed at him. Through the lifting mist, he saw it. Section D of the old pier, the one the city kept promising to repair, had collapsed into the churning water. And there, caught in the twisted metal and rising tide, was a small figure in a pink jacket. Leo had lived near these docks for 3 years, ever since his grandmother, his only family, had passed away and the foster system had chewed him up and spit him out at 16. The local librarian, Mrs. Chun, had been the only one who believed in him, who noticed when he devoured every book on marine biology, oceanography, and coastal ecology. She'd given him access to the computers after hours, let him use the address for his scholarship applications. His backpack was a survival kit built from experience and necessity. A tattered first aid manual he'd memorized cover to cover, supplies scavenged from free clinics, rope he'd practiced tying into every rescue not documented in his notebooks, and a waterproof pouch containing his research portfolio, the key to his future. He'd taught himself advanced knot tying watching Coast Guard training videos on the library computers. He'd studied ocean hazards, rip currents, hypothermia protocols, all because he'd seen too many preventable accidents on these docks. He was ready for this moment, even though he'd prayed it would never come. Help! Somebody help me. The voice was young, terrified, and fading. Leo sprinted toward the collapsed section, his mind already calculating angles, depths, and dangers. The girl, she couldn't be more than 8, had fallen through when the rotten planks gave way. A rusted beam had pinned her leg at an unnatural angle, and the incoming tide was already lapping at her waist. Leo glanced at his phone. 8:51 a.m. 39 minutes to his interview. The research center was 20 minutes away by bus, another 10 to find the right building. He needed to leave now. Right now? But the next high tide wouldn't wait. In 15 minutes, this section would be underwater. In 30, the girl would drown. Voice shifts to direct, urgent address. If you've ever felt overlooked, but knew you had something important to offer, this story is for you. Stay with me. Leo's about to make a choice that will test everything he believes in. Leo's internal war lasted exactly 3 seconds. He dropped his backpack on solid ground, pulled out his rope and first aid kit, and ran toward the collapsed pier. His trained eye assessed the situation with clinical precision. The girl's left femur was fractured, possibly compound. Blood stained the water around a deep laceration on her arm. Her lips were turning blue, early hypothermia. The beam trapping her leg was too heavy to lift alone, but shifting wrong could cause the entire structure to collapse further. Hey, look at me, Leo called, his voice projecting the calm authority he'd learned from emergency response videos. What's your name? Maya, the girl sobbed. I can't feel my leg. I can't. Maya, I'm Leo, and I've got you, okay? I need you to stay really still for me. Can you do that? He secured his rope to a stable pylon, testing it 3 times before trusting his weight to it. The water was shockingly cold as he lowered himself into the debris field, navigating carefully through the twisted metal. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, the muscle memory of 100 practice sessions taking over. First, stabilization. He pulled off his jacket and carefully positioned it as padding around her injured leg. From his first aid kit, he retrieved the improvised splint materials, rigid cardboard he'd waterproofed and cut to size for exactly this kind of emergency. He'd learned that compound fractures near water required immediate immobilization to prevent bacterial contamination. This is going to hurt a little, but I need to secure your leg. Leo explained, his voice steady even as his watch ticked past 8:55. The beam is actually helping keep pressure on it right now. When they lift it off, I need everything stable. Can you squeeze my hand when it hurts too much? Maya's small hand gripped his with surprising strength as he worked. The laceration on her arm was deep, debris-filled, and dangerously close to a major artery. Leo used bottled water from his pack to irrigate it, a technique his manual emphasized for contaminated wounds, then applied pressure with sterile gauze. His hands moved with precision, securing the bandage with the efficient knots he'd practiced until they were automatic. The water rose past Maya's chest, past her shoulders. Leo positioned himself to keep her head elevated, using debris as leverage. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably the reminder he'd set for his interview. He ignored it. "Tell me about school," Leo said, keeping Maya talking to prevent shock. "What's your favorite subject?" "Art," Maya whispered. "I draw sea turtles. Daddy says they're endangered." "Your daddy's right. You know what helps them? People who care enough to learn about them. Like you." The distant wail of sirens finally cut through the fog. Leo's watch read 9:03. The interview started at 9:30. Even if he left this second, ran the entire way, he'd be catastrophically late. The rescue crew arrived with cutting equipment and professional calm. As they worked to free Maya, the lead paramedic examined Leo's stabilization work with raised eyebrows. "Kid, where'd you learn to do this?" "Books," Leo said simply, already backing away. "She needs 4 fluids, watch for compartment syndrome in that leg, and the laceration needs surgical cleaning. There was dock debris in it." "Wait, we need your information." But Leo was already climbing back to solid ground. His watch had a spiderweb crack across the face from when he'd braced against the beam. 9:12 a.m. 18 minutes. Impossible. He grabbed his backpack, the research portfolio inside representing hundreds of hours of work, of hope, of desperate belief that knowledge and dedication could overcome circumstance. The bus stop was empty. The next bus wouldn't arrive for 20 minutes. Leo started running anyway, his wet clothes clinging to him, his chest burning. He ran past the marine supply shops, past the fishing vessels, past every landmark of the waterfront that had been his classroom and his home. He ran until his legs gave out 6 blocks from the research center, collapsing against a wall as the clock on his cracked phone screen mocked him. 9:47 a.m. He'd missed it. He'd missed everything. Leo didn't return to the dock that night. He couldn't face the familiar concrete alcove where he usually slept, couldn't bear to see the collapsed pier and remember the moment he'd chosen someone else's life over his own future. Instead, he wandered to the far end of the port, where the commercial fishing boats cast long shadows in the fading light, and he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd lost. The Ocean Shore program accepted 3 candidates per year, 3 spots for hundreds of applicants. His slot was gone. The foster care system wouldn't hold his emergency housing past 18, which was next month. Without the guardianship program, without the research center's support, he had nothing. He opened his backpack and pulled out his research portfolio, the pages he'd painstakingly compiled on kelp forest restoration, on microplastic filtration systems, on breeding programs for endangered marine species. Moonlight illuminated his handwritten notes, his sketches of marine ecosystems, his dreams rendered in graphite and desperate hope. Leo closed the portfolio and shoved it back into his bag. Then he pulled his knees to his chest and let the tears come, silent and bitter, as the ocean he loved whispered its indifferent song against the pylons. Voice shifts to intense, emotional urgency. If you believe young people who step up deserve protection and support, hit subscribe right now because the justice Leo deserves is about to roll in. Comment "Save the Coast" if this boy's bravery moves you. Dax Reeves was not a man who showed emotion easily. As president of the Azure Vipers Motorcycle Club, he'd built a reputation on control, loyalty, and the kind of protective ferocity that made people think twice before crossing him or his. The Vipers weren't your typical MC. They'd transitioned from a troubled past to become fierce advocates for the Port Crest community, running youth programs and coastal cleanup initiatives. But beneath the leather and chrome, Dax was, first and always, a father. When the hospital called about Maya, his world had narrowed to a single point of terror. The ride to the emergency room was a blur of speed and prayer. But when he burst through the doors, the attending physician had met him with unexpected calm. She's stable, Mr. Reeves. Remarkably stable, considering. Someone provided excellent field treatment before we arrived. Maya's room was a cocoon of beeping monitors and white sheets. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her leg elevated in traction, her arm professionally bandaged. But she was alive, awake, and reaching for him the moment he entered. "Daddy." Dax gathered his daughter as carefully as he could manage, his throat too tight for words. "A boy saved me," Maya said, her voice small but certain. "His name was Leo. He knew everything about broken bones, and he kept my head above water, and he told me about sea turtles, and then he just left." The rescue crew's report was frustratingly sparse. Male, late teens, wet clothes, extensive knowledge of emergency medicine and marine hazards. No name beyond Leo. No contact information. He'd vanished before anyone could thank him, let alone get details. That didn't sit right with Dax. He made calls from Maya's hospital room, activating the Viper's network of waterfront connections. Dock workers, shop owners, the community they'd spent years building relationships with. Everyone owed somebody a favor, and Dax was calling them all in. It was Big Tommy, who ran the marine supply warehouse, who provided the first real lead. Homeless kid, real smart, always hanging around the docks studying stuff. Saw him at the library a lot. Mrs. Chin might know him. Mrs. Chin did know him. When Dax walked into the Port Crest Library that evening, still wearing his road vest and carrying the weight of his daughter's near death, the elderly librarian took one look at him and said, "You're Maya's father. I saw it on the news. I'm looking for Leo." Mrs. Chin's expression shifted through surprise, concern, and something that looked like grief. "He's not in trouble? He saved my daughter's life." She sat down heavily. "Then you need to know something. Leo Martinez is one of the smartest, most dedicated young people I've ever met. He's been homeless for 3 years. He taught himself advanced marine biology, emergency medicine, advanced mathematics, all from library books and free online courses. And this morning, he missed the most important interview of his life to save Maya. The Ocean Shore Marine Research Center Guardianship Program. It was his only chance at stability before he ages out of emergency housing next month. Dax felt something cold settle in his chest. The interview was this morning, 9:30. I helped him prepare for weeks. He was perfect for it. And now, Mrs. Chin's voice cracked. He won't answer my calls. I think he believes he's lost everything. The Azure Vipers mobilized like they were going to war, because in a sense, they were. This was about protecting someone who'd protected one of their own. Dax divided the waterfront into sections, assigning riders to canvass every inch. They showed Leo's description, compiled from Mrs. Chun and the rescue crew, to everyone they encountered. It was Razor, the club's road captain, who found the first concrete evidence. "Boss, talked to some kids hanging out near Pier 8. Said they know a guy who matches, usually sleeps in the alcove by the old cannery. Hasn't been there in 2 days, but they think he might be hiding out near the research center." The irony was bitter, hiding near the place that represented everything he'd lost. They found Leo's alcove first. Dax insisted on seeing it himself, needed to understand the life his daughter's savior had been living. The space was painfully organized, a sleeping bag folded precisely, books stacked by subject, a small camp stove. A calendar on the wall had one date circled in red, his 18th birthday, 3 weeks away. After that, the emergency youth services would disappear, and he'd be truly on his own. A notebook lay open on a makeshift desk of stacked crates. Dax picked it up, flipping through pages of detailed sketches, scientific notes, and observations about Port Crest's marine ecosystem. The last entry was dated 2 days ago. Interview prep. Remember to mention the kelp restoration data from last month. This has to work. It has to. Dax carefully set the notebook down, his jaw tight. Find him. Find him now. Voice becomes forceful, passionate. If you can't stand seeing the most selfless among us lose everything, stay with me, because the Azure Vipers are about to redefine justice. Drop a comment saying Vipers protect if you want Leo to get the future he earned. They found Leo at sunset on the 3rd day, sitting on the rocks below the Port Crest Marine Research Center, staring out at the ocean. His backpack sat beside him, and even from a distance, Dax could see the defeat in the slope of his shoulders. The sound of motorcycles made Leo turn, his expression shifting to confusion and then wariness as 6 leather-clad riders dismounted and approached. Dax pulled off his helmet and kept walking until he stood directly in front of the teenager who'd saved his daughter. Leo Martinez? I'm not in trouble, am I? Leo's voice was guarded, defensive. I just helped. You saved my daughter's life. Leo blinked. Maya? Is she okay? Because of you, yes. The doctors said your field treatment was textbook perfect. You stabilized a compound fracture, prevented shock, cleaned a contaminated wound, all with supplies you carried in a backpack. Dax's voice was rough with emotion he didn't try to hide. Do you know what most people would have done? Called 911 and waited. She would have drowned. I just did what I knew how to do. No. Dax stepped closer. You sacrificed your future to do what you knew had to be done. Mrs. Chun told me about the interview, about the guardianship program, about what you gave up. Leo's face went pale. I don't want thanks. I just want, his voice cracked. I just want a chance to do something that matters. Then I'm going to give you something, Dax said, his voice carrying across the rocks with the weight of a vow. You gave up your chance to save my child. Now, we are giving you a new chance, right here. I don't understand. Dax gestured to the riders behind him. The Azure Vipers take care of our community. You're part of that community now. We've been making calls for the last 3 days. First, to the Ocean Shore Marine Research Center. Leo's breath caught. They already filled the position. They're reopening applications. For you. Specifically, their director watched the news coverage of Maya's rescue and read the statement from the emergency responders about your medical knowledge. She called me yesterday to ask how she could find you. That's not how it works. They can't just. They can, and they did. Your interview is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. Mrs. Chin already has your portfolio ready. Dax pulled out a business card and pressed it into Leo's shaking hand. But that's not all. My daughter nearly died because I wasn't there to protect her. You were. That means something in my world. That means everything. I've been through the process before. Dax continued, his voice steady. I'm a single father. I know what it takes to provide a stable home for someone who needs it. And I know what it's like to be young and have no one in your corner. He paused, making sure Leo was really hearing him. I want to start the process of becoming your legal guardian. If you'll let me, you'd have a home, a family, a place to belong while you pursue your education and your work in marine biology. Leo stared at him, his face a portrait of disbelief. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I know you ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. I know you have the discipline to teach yourself advanced science with nothing but library books and determination. I know you made the hardest choice anyone can make, to save a life at the cost of your own dreams, without hesitation. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Dax's voice softened, and Maya hasn't stopped talking about the brave boy who saved her. She wants to meet you again, properly, as family. Tears streamed down Leo's face, and he didn't bother to wipe them away. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll come have dinner with us tonight. Say you'll show up tomorrow for that interview. Say you'll let someone protect you for once, the way you protected my daughter. Leo's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. The next morning, Leo walked into the Ocean Shore Marine Research Center wearing clean clothes that Dax had taken him to buy, his portfolio under his arm, and hope kindling in his chest for the first time in years. The interview panel consisted of Dr. Sarah Chun, no relation to the librarian, a marine biologist with 3 decades of experience, and 2 of her senior researchers. Dr. Chin's first question set the tone. Tell me about your approach to emergency triage in marine environments. For 90 minutes, Leo talked about his self-directed studies, his observations of Port Crest's ecosystem, his ideas for conservation programs and community education initiatives. He detailed the kelp restoration data he'd compiled, explained his theories about microplastic filtration using native species, outlined a youth engagement program that could turn Port Crest's at-risk teenagers into the next generation of environmental advocates. When he finished, Dr. Chin sat back in her chair and smiled. Mr. Martinez, I've been in this field for 32 years. I have never seen someone with your combination of raw knowledge, practical application skills, and genuine passion for marine conservation. Your entrance exam scores, which Mrs. Chin forwarded to us, would place you in the top percentile of our graduate students, and you accomplished that education entirely on your own. She slid a folder across the table. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship to our marine biology apprenticeship program, with housing provided on our residential campus. You'll work directly with our research teams, Continue your education with full access to our resources and facilities, and